Hi, everyone. It's Rich Sheffrin, and here we are for another Q&A call. I just got back early this morning from Washington, D.C. at the SIPA conference, which is the Specialized Information Publishing Association. They used to be the newsletter organization, but they've morphed in the last couple of years into more of a generic specialized information, which encompasses all of the bigger newsletter providers, from everyone from Harvard Business Review to Duke Wellness to Agora to Boardroom, etc. The issue was really about Web 2.0, and you might wonder why I would go to something like that, and really I wasn't there to learn anything about Web 2.0. I mean, quite honestly, I knew more than anybody that was standing up and speaking about it, but what I didn't know as well, and what I felt I could learn a lot about, and still do feel I could learn a lot more about, is publishing models, about how to create great content and then how to redeploy it in multiple places, repurpose it, and things of that nature. And so we can get into some of that if there's some questions about it. I don't have any long list of questions here in front of me because it's been kind of light on the question side. So if you have a question, just make sure to press *1. And it could be quite a short call. That'll all depend on you.
Rich, hi, Harry Williams. How you doing?
Very good.
Hey, a couple questions. The first one is on that Gary Vaynerchuk phone call you were going to do if people bought books.
Right.
Is that still on to be scheduled, or?
We're still scheduling it. I mean, the challenge is, and it's such a weird effect. Like, we had very few people buy the book, and you know, it's always this big question mark in my mind. Like, why, when I recommend like someone else's product, I can sell 200 or 300 of a $2,000 product, but when I recommend a book that's $15 or $19, it seems like if we get 20 people buying the book, at least sending us back like a receipt or something to get something, it's a lot. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll do something, but, you know, there were only 10 people, I think, if I remember correctly, who had taken us up on that offer. And, you know, that would be about a 2-minute, well, not a 2-minute, but a 20-minute call. So, yeah, we're still, it's not been axed, it's just been postponed. We'll probably try something else to get a few more purchasers of the book so that we can just make the call more meaningful for everybody, because, you know, the idea was that Gary was going to talk about certain things, but he was also going to really base it on the questions, even as he kind of had his outline of what he wanted to cover. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Yeah, okay. The other question was, when you, I know that in the past you've commented about when you read a book, you used to mind map the book, and then you've changed ways of putting together your notes. What's your current practice as far as summarizing or putting down your notes? Are you dictating those into, I mean, how are you doing it? Do you still mind
right now I'm dictating them in, but once again, that it's just kind of, it's not, I mean, if I read it on the Kindle, I have them, right? I just import them, and that's really nice.
All right, so let me interrupt you. What's a Kindle? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, that's Amazon's e-book reader, but not an e-book reader. It's a book reader, you know. So a lot of newer books now are coming out in Kindle format, and the Kindle is, I think, about $200 or $300, and it's a book, like it looks like a book, but it's really just a digital screen, and you can buy books directly from Amazon through the Kindle anytime and get the book like a minute later. And you can highlight while you read or take notes, and then you can export all those. You can export your highlights and your notes. So that saves me a tremendous amount of time over, you know, a hardcover book, but I'm still kind of used to books. So not all the books I read are on the Kindle, unfortunately. But those are the two things I'm doing. I'm either speaking my notes in, or I'm just importing them. And Kristen, my assistant, she types at about 80 words a minute. So my thought is that I'm going to start putting more of the stuff on her to do, so that it doesn't get tied up with me having to spend a bunch of time speaking them in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you speak them, is that with using that like Dragon software?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And is your preference to use the Kindle? I mean, if you had a choice between a book and the Kindle, would you use the Kindle?
More and more, it's getting that way. But it's like I just bought a bunch of books the other day, and because they weren't available on the Kindle, and I enjoy the experience of reading more on a real book than a Kindle. But that could just be based on reading real books for my whole life. So it's just something that I think for myself at least I got to get more and more used to, and I just got to force myself to keep reading on there until it becomes the same kind of process for me. If that makes sense. But I wouldn't say that's the case today. And I still get a lot of advanced copies of books before they come out because they like a testimonial or me to write about it or something. And once again, they're not sending to me in Kindle format, so it becomes more difficult.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I had.
All right. Well,
thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Okay. Let's take the next question.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Jeff People. I don't know if you've recently read Dan Kennedy's new book on ruthless management, but I'm basically I've got a multi-million-dollar software company, and I'm trying to get more out of my employees, and I'm trying to figure out, well, geez, if there's what your thoughts are on really building a team and really getting more productivity out of people. I've been to your conferences, and you speak many things, but that's really the crux of it.
I have his book, but I haven't read it. But I'm pretty familiar with his philosophies, I think, overall. But I wouldn't be able to comment specifically on anything in that book because while I have it, I haven't read it. It comes down to, I think, more and more. My opinion about that is that it comes down more with how you manage the company than how you manage people. The secondary thing is obviously how you manage the people. But if you don't have certain elements of your business in place, then you can manage them, you can micromanage them, and you're still not going to really get the kind of output that you want. So what I mean by that is that at the end of the day, do you have very clear objectives and priorities for the company? And to give you kind of like a scope, like we have in our company, really, you could have up to 5. That's what management type of advice is. But we have 2 primary objectives currently. And one of them is more important than the other. And so bonuses and everything else is related to that. And everybody's performance plan is related to those 2 objectives, but they understand that one is more important. And that one that's more important is the driver also. There's one metric that relates to that we monitor. And that metric is something that everybody's bonuses is tied to. And the whole concept is that it is something that where you start cultivating a sense of you not having to be the bad guy, because if somebody doesn't get their job done, it's going to cost everybody money.
Right.
And everybody's aware of it because of the way you run the company, which is back to what I was saying, having the way we do it now is having daily huddles, right? 10 minutes, no longer, everybody's standing. And the purpose of that is really to report on yesterday's number, right? That number, that one metric. And also anybody that's hit a roadblock, is to voice it there. We don't necessarily solve the roadblock there, but the roadblocks are surfaced there. And then anything that has to happen to overcome that roadblock is taken offline. And then once a week, we have a bigger meeting where we're kind of analyzing our overall progress. And if there's still issues that need to be solved, that's where that'll happen. And also kind of looking at our performance and is it on track to get to where we are, and going around the room and everybody kind of reporting where they're at with their plan that relates back to the bigger plan of what we want to achieve. And so by doing it all like that, you then start to cultivate what I was talking about as far as that your job really is just as the leader is to ask questions. And, if someone's not getting their job done, there's all of a sudden a lot of peer pressure because they got to say basically in front of everybody else that they didn't get it done. And it's going to cost everybody money.
Right.
So all of a sudden you're no longer the bad guy, right? And all that pressure that's being exerted is more from other people and just the process than yourself.
Okay. Well,
a book that if you want to read a book that kind of describes it, because there's a lot of books about this, but the one that I think I like the best. I don't think I like the best. I do like the best. Is a book by the name of Rockefeller Habits.
Rockefeller Habits. Okay, this is great.
Yeah. Basically, that book is all about how John Rockefeller ran his businesses, and it's very much in line with what I just said. So a lot of the component pieces, when I read that book, it was kind of coincidental. And I was like, oh my God, like this is what we do, because it's really the best way to run a company. And it just so happens that of all the books I've ever read about it on small business, and there's a lot of books on it, like Vital Factors, The Six Disciplines. These are all books like related to how to run a small business. I would say the Rockefeller Habits is far superior to any of them because it kind of like breaks it down. Like, this is your daily meeting. This is what should be covered. This is what shouldn't. Here's a form for it, right? This is how you do your weekly meetings. This is how you do your monthly meetings. All the kinds of things that I just mentioned are covered there. We don't necessarily do everything the way they suggested because we were doing it before, like I read that book. But but nonetheless, it's a great starting point, and it's a great way to kind of have a plan at least in place, and then you modify it. But then the bigger question, and this is kind of very much related to what we're talking about, and that is, are you very clear about your objectives and what are the big things that need to get done, and what you're about, and all the elements that are kind of we go really deeply into in BGS, because if you don't have those things, it's kind of difficult, like your vision, like where do you want to be in a year at least from now, like how's the company going to look differently, and what are your values, and how do your values translate into how you do business?
Right. And I guess that's great stuff. Hey, does it talk about one of the challenges? We're diversified. We only have about 10, 12 people in headquarters, and the rest of the, so we have 20 plus people all over the world, literally.
Right.
And one of the challenges, how do you do daily huddles? And we have sort of diversified product lines, and they're all supposed to interact. And what we're finding is that, we're having all sorts of these different meetings, and getting the two different groups to align is just like, wow, that's tough.
It can be tough, and so at the end of the day, it comes down to a discipline and really seeing it as a priority. And so for us, there have been projects where someone hit a bottleneck, and that bottleneck wasn't discussed. And because that bottleneck wasn't discussed, it easily cost us $1 million, in sales, right, that we would have had.
Right.
And so you don't need to have too many experiences like that to be like, these daily meetings are that important, right? Because and unfortunately we've had it more than once earlier on in our development. So that's where that kind of came up, because it's like, God, if we had only known this earlier, we could have easily fixed it. And so that becomes a really important point. And then we've also, and this is much more recently, because the stuff I've been mentioning so far, that's kind of been in place for a while, but much more recently, with the last 2 weeks, we did a little bit of a restructuring where we moved a person that was actually someone that we were thinking about maybe even helping them get a job somewhere else, and we moved them into a different position, and that different position being something that we felt her skill set was very strong in, which was project management was one of her skills that she was very strong in. And so what we're doing is we're putting her in charge of all outside projects, right? And all outsourcers and all outside vendors. And so once a week in our weekly meeting, we just started with that person in place to, looking at everything that we do and, just spending 5 or 10 minutes, asking the question, is there anything that we're doing that if we had a piece of software, a script, an outsourcer or something, it could be done faster, cheaper, and free up more of the time of the people inside the company. And so that we start that. It's too new to really report anything wonderful at this point, but that's not because of anybody's performance. It's too new. But the idea being is that if we're going to really move more to an organization that has Slack built into it, where people can move around and attack things at a moment's notice, then people's time can't be fully utilized. And if people's time isn't fully utilized, then who's doing the stuff that needs to get done? And then hopefully it's being done in a way that's actually cheaper. And, we're doing a lot more stuff like that, where we're bringing in experts that have expertise that we don't, and having them kind of do their thing, and then leveraging that expert's work by then taking what needs to be done after the expert into either the Philippines or India and stuff like that. So I'll give you an example so it's not so ephemeral. One of the things that we're doing is we're adding a lot of content to BGS. Nobody sees it right now. It's inside the system. And so what has to be done is a lot of this content was created by me, but not created, quote unquote, the right way when it comes to, let's say, instructional design and stuff like that. So what has to happen is that someone with instructional design and info mapping experience goes through all these old presentations that I did and puts in, in the beginning of every whatever number of slides, the objective of those slides. Like what was the intent of providing that information? And that is what the info mapping / instructional designer does, and cuts up also the transcripts to where it's appropriate. And then the audio file, the transcript, the slides, then we don't need that person to do anything more than that. That person has an expertise that we don't have. And then it goes either, we're just in the works with this, but it'll either go to the Philippines or India, where the work of actually doing it is relatively easy. Anybody can do it, but it's time intensive. And the intelligence has already been done by somebody that was outside of our company because we didn't have the expertise, and it was also cheaper to do it that way. And, and then the process is all being managed by this person who's now in place to manage all of these kinds of things. And so all of a sudden, whereas that project in the past might have took up at least two people inside our company's time, right? Like 2 weeks of it.
Right.
Now it's not requiring anybody's time, and it's being done better and cheaper.
Right. Well, that's great. Are you using Elance and Rent-A-Coder and Workaholics for Hire kind of thing, or are you just outsourced? How do you define these outsourced?
Well, we haven't been doing it long enough, so we have relationships. We have some relationships already in place, so that was a no-brainer. The next level now is to start building out our list of other people that we can start relying on. Now, we didn't have anybody for info mapping, instructional design, but I knew someone who would know someone. And so a lot of our list going forward is going to be built that way, because I look at those other places as the place of last resort. If you don't know anyone, then that's where you got to go. But if you know anyone who knows anyone, you're always better off kind of going down that road, because somebody who's already gotten experience with someone is going to have a lot less potential for problems than you're just getting, no matter how good their reviews are, because it's still a question mark. It's not reviewed by someone you know.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
All right, that's great. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I think you'll get a lot of benefit out of that book, The Rockefeller Habits.
Definitely.
I wouldn't follow it exactly. Because I think that's always the easy way out of things, but you won't be able to. You got to just look at it as a model, and then manipulate it so that it best serves your interests. So for example, I think they're going to tell you you should have 5 objectives for the year or the quarter. For a company our size, I think, and we've got some big objectives. We didn't need 5; we needed 2, and that's enough.
Great.
And so it's just about kind of being clear about where you want to take the company and what needs to happen, and all of those and the players involved. Maybe you can't do every day. I would strongly suggest it, but maybe you can't, and so maybe it's done every 2 days or 3 days. The idea though is to really understand why, and see how much you agree with the concept of why, and then if you agree with the concept, schedule accordingly.
Okay, great, thanks. Hey, one other question, is that all right?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Really Easy Reader is a great product, and I use it all for PDFs and stuff like that. But I also have to read an enormous amount of just printed material. Mm-hmm. Have you come up with a cool way of dealing with that? I mean, I don't know if I want to just sit there and scan all this stuff, and but I mean, it's just like, how am I going to read all this stuff? And you know, I went to your last one of your conferences. I don't know if it was the last one in Florida, and Paul Sheely talked, and I haven't been able to get to one of his speed reading things. But you know, I guess that's my only other alternative. But I'm literally talking about thousands of pages of documentation, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
And so along those lines, it really depends on your commitment level. Like, we did a program that has it was a 2-day thing where people who did the 2 days had an average of like a 400% increase in their reading speed. So it was really effective. But, you know, that would take you 16, 20 hours, you know, and so that's a question mark. There's another one that I've used, I think it works pretty well. It won't work anywhere near as well as, you know, going and actually taking a full course and doing the practice that's necessary, but it will get you some of the way there, and it's certainly worth it, like from a standpoint of time and money, and that is IQ.
IQ.com? It's just I type in IQ?
EYEQ. And, you know, they're doing infomercials now and stuff like that. I've had it for a couple of years. It's a software for the PC. I don't think they have Mac, or at least I have it. I have it on the PC side. And what it does is like about 7 minutes of exercises a day.
Okay.
Eye exercises. And it won't get you like the kind of speed that, like, you know, a ridiculous speed. But I print out pretty much everything as well. And
okay.
But I print it out because I like reading like stuff in my hand. And
right.
Even when I'm gonna like cut and paste afterwards, I still print it out, highlight, do all that. Then I go back to the original document and just like follow what I did. And I start at the bottom so that it doesn't readjust the whole sheet as I'm going down, you know, the thing.
Right.
But yeah, so it's IQ. It's like $190 or something like that. And but what's cool about it is that it has like, and at the end of the day, I mean, even if you take a speed reading course, and if you wouldn't take a speed reading course, I would recommend ours because the woman who taught it was really, that's who I learned from.
What was her name again? I know I saw it in one of the DVDs.
Patricia. What's Patricia's last name? I forget Patricia's last name.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I remember trying to do it, you know, following along from the DVD, but it was very difficult because, you know, they were talking about materials, and I don't know. I got the home study version of that of one of your.
Yeah, that wasn't the last one with Paul Sheely. It was the one before that. But
right, right, and you put. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's going to be required to kind of step it up. I think you should have all the materials because that would have been kind of. I'm pretty sure that we did that. But either whether you take a course or whether you buy a piece of software, at the end of the day, it's really not only what you do while you're doing it, but then it's a discipline of practicing it going forward until it really locks in. And that's kind of the cool thing about IQ. I mean, you're not going to get to high performance because you're not really spending that amount of time, like really like on the kind of drilling that would be necessary. But the 7 minutes a day is going to make a big difference over time, and it's not that long. I mean, you know, a week or two, you'll start seeing like, I mean, you should easily be able to double your reading speed in a week or two.
Okay.
And and then just how far you want to take it is, it's the same with audio. It's like, if you're willing to push yourself harder than what your current comprehension is, your mind will eventually catch up. But it's going to be, you know, it's just a question of your comfort level and your ability to practice with stuff that's not as important that you get everything because you're not in the beginning, and and being okay with that. So that's either your current reading or just some ancillary outside reading that you really could care less whether you get the concepts or not.
But
you have to go fast. That's the issue.
Right. Yeah, so this thing will help my eyes, but Patricia will help me with, you know, obviously making sure I know the objective. That's one of the things I remember. Always know the objective of reading before I start, and those other concepts. Okay.
Yeah, the question that you want to get answered. I mean, you know, the more you do that, the better off you are. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Okay, well, thanks very much.
My pleasure. All right, we'll take the next question.
Hey, Rich, Teddy Garcia.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Hey, I got kind of two competitive issues that propped up this week and wanted to kind of run by you.
Okay.
One kind of revolves around first mover advantage versus, doing the proper surveying of the market and following Jeff's product launch formula. So basically, I noticed this week some guy was running PPC ads in my niche. There's currently not an info product in my specific niche, but he started running ads with a landing page and a quick survey form, kind of gathering data to be able to create a product. So my question is, and I was planning to come out with a product later on in the year, but not quite this soon. So I'm trying to figure out how important is it to beat this guy to market, or kind of take what he comes out with and improve on it, or kind of what's the best strategy?
It's hard to say because unless you know who you're dealing with, you don't know whether it's significant or not significant, you know?
He's done other courses on teleseminars and stuff like that. So he's a fairly big name marketer, but not necessarily in this specific niche.
Yeah.
He's using Infusion and
what's that?
I said he's using Infusion and stuff like that. So he knows what he's doing.
If you feel that it's going to be problematic after the fact, then yeah, it's like that's kind of along the lines of really what got me off my butt to create what I created, because like I had done these coaching programs, but I started to see that people that I was coaching were starting to take stuff that I taught them and teaching it, and it was only a matter of time until, people would associate it with that person, not with me, right? And so that became something that had to be, or lots of people, that I had to really move on. And, and it just kind of made me work a lot faster. It's like, for example, when I started mind mapping, I started mind mapping over 10 or 12 years ago. I definitely didn't invent it, but I was an early adapter with it. When I first came into the internet marketing space, like most people hadn't heard of it. Like Yannick Silver had, Stephen Pierce had not, and a bunch of other people had not. I taught it to them, and now they use it all the time. And, that's fine because I don't really care that much about mind mapping. I love it and I use it every day, but it's not part of my core of what I teach, and nothing's going to happen if everybody's using it. But, as more and more people have used it that I've taught and are doing it, it's also not special anymore. And that's okay because, like I said, it's not important to me. But if it was something really important to me, then I would have tried to have gotten a product out there first, because especially if it's catering to our space, because once somebody else comes out with a product in our space, there's always potential for more. There's lots of people that overlap all the time. But if you can be first, it's always better.
And so would you recommend then, being that I don't have the content yet and haven't done the adequate research in terms of what the markets are looking for, kind of do it like a membership site and just kind of create the content on the fly, kind of a video a week type?
If you have the capacity to do that, sure, yeah.
Okay.
And obviously I would ask a question on that person's thing, seed it a couple times so that I stayed in the loop of what they were doing.
Yeah. And he's got, right now he's just collecting data. He's got no autoresponder series. There's no follow-up. There's really nothing behind it yet. So I figured I had a little bit of time. I was going to actually circumvent it by, basically my customers are going to use small local business owners. So instead of doing an online survey, it's just go pound on some doors and kind of ask them in person, kind of stay under his radar, but still gather some data.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay. And then the other issue I came across is there's another company that actually has the same name as my business, and actually our domain names are like 2 letters apart. And I just realized that he just recently tried to file a trademark on the name.
Well, if they just tried to file a trademark and you were in existence before they filed the trademark, and you might want to check with a lawyer. I would
right.
With a lawyer, but my understanding is that you're pretty safe. They can't go retro actively.
Okay. Now, my question was,
prevent other people from doing it.
My big question was, do I approach the guy directly and be like, hey, man, look, I've been here before you, so you probably want to stop that, or do I go the lawyer route and make a bunch of lawyers rich?
You talk to someone that has some legal experience to see what your options are.
Okay.
And then you make a decision. Because, if the name is important to you, it's a costly proposition.
Yeah, and it's not that I want to put him out of business or necessarily. I mean, we're not necessarily a competitor. We've actually been we both had the similar name for what looks like to be almost 10 years now. I mean, I probably got my name maybe 6 months before he did. And he's in the same business, but he's in a different state, and he's not really going for a national presence or anything. So I don't really have a problem with him staying in business, and I'm not trying to shut him down. I want to make sure that he's not filing the trademark to try to shut me down.
Well, based on my understanding, but like I said, you'd want to check it out. I don't think you can.
Okay.
Because you can't, if there's multiple people using a mark, and then someone trademarks it, which is difficult if multiple people are already using it, unless you're using it in places where other people aren't, you can lay claim. So there's other strategic profits, but there aren't strategic profits that give the kind of advice that we do online, and we are trademarked. But we didn't trademark it originally. Wasn't high on my list, but as we started getting bigger, it became more important. And I think it costs, depending on whether you want to just do it in the U.S. or you want to do it worldwide, I think worldwide it'll cost you $15,000.
Ouch. Yeah.
And because you got to register in all the different countries and stuff. And we did, but we did that much later on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got a meeting with a lawyer tomorrow to talk about it. But just wasn't sure. It was just best to kind of approach him first and just kind of talk it out.
I would first talk to a lawyer.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Hello, Rich.
Hey, Adele.
How are you doing?
Very good.
Great. I have a question about a comment you were making just a few minutes ago, and you were mentioning something very exciting, that you are getting the BGS curriculum more oriented around an instructional design kind of model.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering the extent to which you might have considered, tapping some of the expertise in the BGS program itself for the very things that you're talking about. Those of us who've gone through the program, have a lot of insight, obviously, into what you're trying to accomplish, and those of us with business coaching experience. And I am also an expert in instructional design and information mapping. So I thought I'd mention that and see if that's something that you would consider. I know several of us, I think, who've been on the calls have had that kind of experience as well. So
yeah, I am working with someone, but that doesn't mean there's a lot of content. I mean, because, it's just to give you the scope, and there's a lot more than just this, but BGS was the third coaching program I did.
Right.
And there were two others. And whereas BGS was, centered around 12, the first one had 32 modules, the second one had 20-some-odd modules, and there's a tremendous amount of overlap. But there's also a lot of stuff that is not even covered, right? I think I did 4 hours on process mapping in one of those, and I did just a lot of different stuff, right? And when I created this one, I kind of pulled the best pieces, but that doesn't mean that, there's a lot more depth. And so that's 100 hours worth of stuff in just those two.
Mm-hmm.
And, and PowerPoints and audios and transcripts and everything. And then before I did the programs, I did a lot of other stuff. So there's a lot of, there's quite a bit, is my point, and probably more than what one person could handle in the timelines that we would want if we could get everything done. So, yeah, there definitely is. And my advice would be to email my assistant, Kristen, who is at kglossy, KGLOSSY,
mm-hmm.
at strategicprofits.com.
Okay.
Just explain that we had a conversation, and exactly what we just talked about, and then it'll get passed over to me, and then we'll set something up and we'll talk about it.
That sounds great. I don't know if it's of interest on this call, but some of the materials that I've been pulling together to send you since the last time we talked really kind of go into a lot more depth into various ideas about not only how to transform a business coaching program like yours into more of an instructional design paradigm, but going even deeper than that. We were talking last time about the various things, and I've heard you on other calls since then talking about the different forms of, the new kind of content development that you're working toward, putting together the being able to, say, branch through the system based on different types of user questions that might come up at any point in time. Some of the things that will be definitely more technologically advanced. And it's a whole vein of the type of online learning capability and branching within systems and so on. But a whole other dimension of that I've really I've not seen anywhere, and I'm working on as a kind of a grand vision for myself in developing my own business model, and something that I think could plug in to programs like this is going even deeper, and it really gets at the challenge of taking a business coaching program, whether it's yours or Jay Abraham's. I'm also in Jeff Walker's. Just all of these different kinds of models have really taken the notion of learning online in various exciting and creative directions, because they diverge from the standard instructional design models, and they've applied a number of the principles in very creative ways. But they're still missing something that's very, very important that no one's really been able to accomplish.
Yeah, the action side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
The mastery piece.
Yeah. It's all knowledge for knowledge's sake that
right.
has to be applied.
Yep.
Part of the, I kind of like to at least think of myself as about somewhat ahead of everybody else most of the time, and so in that vein, that's kind of why I've been studying instructional design.
Right.
That's why I've been talking to experts in it, because I believe that going forward into the future, that you either have to to sell information, it either has to be very well designed, right? Because there's a ton of information out there for free, and it has to and personality based. Those are the two elements that will allow you to charge a premium. And therefore, we've been working on it internally, and there are also plans, and we could kind of talk about it too, of taking an instructional designer in under our umbrella and have a new guru that is, where we're creating products for the marketplace, because that's in our plan, not to necessarily do what you're talking about as far as specifically to coaching programs, just in general, teaching the concepts of information, instructional design, information mapping, etc., so that whether you're creating a PDF or whether you're creating a course or whatever you're creating, you follow those formats so that it becomes easier later on to repurpose.
Exactly.
And then it's focused more on the action side, not on the education side.
Right, and I teach those very topics, as well. And I've been president of the Society for Technical Communication in our area for the last 8 years, or 6 years.
Yeah, so I'm very interested in talking to you. One of the other people I'll tell you that I don't know if you know her, Kathy Moore.
I think the name is familiar.
Yeah, she has a blog. If you go to blog.kathy-moore.com, and Kathy with a C.
Okay, Kathy-Moore, M-O-O-R-E.
Yeah.
Okay, .com. And on that the topic of mastery, I know we could spend quite a bit of time, but the ideas that I've been piecing together that I'd like to share with you, and maybe offline might be more ideal when we get a chance to talk. It's taking it so much further than anything that I have ever seen in instructional design. But are you familiar with Donald Kirkpatrick's levels of evaluation?
I've come across it, but I wouldn't say that I know it.
Just in a nutshell, Kirkpatrick back in 1959 came up with a kind of a classic, what turned out to be a classic model for evaluating various types of interventions, you might say, or but things that help people improve or develop performances. And the 4 levels that he talks about have been expanded by a lot of other people. They've added more levels, but really it boils down to the first level being, did you enjoy what you did? Did you like the program? Did you think it was good? And that's level 1. And that essentially is what's called a smile sheet. You fill out a survey, you fill out some kind of a thing. It gives them immediate feedback, and whereas it may seem superficial, without it, you could if people aren't happy with what they experienced, it could be a really big problem if you continued on.
Yeah.
The next level is knowledge acquisition, and that's learning. Did you actually learn something? And that's usually evaluated by, testing or various types of practice exercises and so on. And that's level 2. Level 3 is knowledge transfer and application to real-world situations. Can you take it back and do something with it? And this is where, actually beyond level 1 so far, the knowledge acquisition and the learning transfer are both shaky, and oftentimes in the coaching world, because it's hard to find out. And furthermore, the 4th level is measurable improvements in business results. Did you actually get something to happen in your business? And usually that's collected anecdotally. I mean, you've got a number of testimonials of people saying, well, I did what you said, and I've doubled my profits. But the thing that is kind of missing in all the paradigms is that there's no guarantee of that. The model for coaching, which can certainly go way, way beyond instruction, doesn't necessarily guarantee mastery for everyone, and or necessarily for anyone. So,
right.
Those are some of the really, really exciting, cutting-edge ideas that we could talk about, because I've been creating a kind of a system for, kind of a closed-loop system for ensuring that can occur. And it would be sort of revolutionary, because it wouldn't, it can embody a lot of things that you've already thought about or you're thinking about doing or you may already have been doing, but I think it's very different, though, from what I've seen in most coaching programs. And
I'm sure it is. Yeah, and, and we can talk more about it, and I'd love to.
Okay.
I think that this, for everybody just listening, you kind of feel this way already, so it's not going to be anything new to you, but the reason I'm excited about it and the reason I'm looking into it and spending time with it is, one, that, I think it's just like long-term it has to be done, but also just in my positioning of where I've been and what I've done, and I think this is another element. So, a couple of years ago when I kind of taught people, like, hey, you want to give away free information, you want to do this, and then I also, like, even before that, like, you want to build these systems and processes, and you want to really, like, kind of build your business, which at the time and in this space nobody was talking about. This is the next thing that I think will be like a thing for us, not as
right.
big as some of those other things have been, but definitely something that we ultimately can kind of bring to the space and hang our hat on and be another thing that we kind of introduce, not to the world, obviously, because it's been around for quite a while, but at least to the space. And before we do that, though, we're kind of working on it internally to do it with our own stuff, and also talking to people about who's the right person to kind of bring to the market. Because I'm not looking to become an expert in that kind of stuff. I just want to know it well enough so as I create material, it is, better at the end of the day. And I think that anybody who produces information is going to need to start thinking about that.
Right.
There's just more and more information out there, so how do you distinguish yours as being better? And this is one of those ways.
Exactly, that you have a system in place, a methodology that enables people to be successful with what you do, and it's not just simply dependent on their level of motivation to absorb it and figure out how to apply it.
Right.
But would be
superior.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just superior. And then, at some point, it'll be so much into the way people think that will no longer be another competitive advantage. It'll go away, and then there'll be something else. But right now, that's not the case, and therefore, it would be a competitive advantage, and it would be another reason why someone should pay you as opposed to try and find that information online.
Exactly, or go to a different type of learning training program, which would stop short of implementing all of these other components that I think would be really valuable in helping people master the material. Because there's just springing up all over. Not only are there a lot of sources of information, but there are a lot of sources of, so-called training and coaching programs. And I'm even talking about locally, because I'm like the gentleman who was just on with you just a moment ago, who was doing his Jeff Walker, based surveys locally, right in his neighborhood. I'm doing the exact same thing, and I'm seeing a plethora of these different types of coaching programs springing up, teaching people how to, do Web 2.0 marketing and create, and this is in a fairly, semi-rural area where we live in Central California. So it's becoming, but it's a hotbed of entrepreneurialism, so it's becoming a lot more a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork right now. So my goal is to figure out what would make my local program, a lot more unique. But it's scalable and it's extensible, and this concept could, as you exactly say, it could seem very new when put out there. But ultimately, yes, it wouldn't. If people start adopting it, then it wouldn't be new after a while. But my goal would be to see. I think everybody should adopt this kind of model because it serves so many different kinds of purposes and be a kind of standard for the way things should be done. Okay, good. So your assistant's spelling of her first name is Christina, you said?
Kristen.
Kristen.
That is Kay Glossi.
Right, Kristen?
Yeah.
Okay. I will email her. Thank you very much, Rich, and hopefully we'll be talking soon.
Cool. Okay, my pleasure. And just along those lines, I think it's important that people understand because maybe it'll provide some insight. So I'm not going to take the next question. You'll still be on. I can hear you. But it's important that you kind of take this perspective as you look at your business. Okay, so here's kind of the concept. I want to make my material better, and hopefully everybody wants to improve the products that they offer their clients because, that's always a good thing. And ultimately, if you have competitors, that's the way you continually distinguish yourself. So it evolved from there, right? For me to start studying it. Then after I started studying it, I realized that I wasn't going to be a master at this, and that it would be better if I started working with certain people to help me get stuff done going forward. So when I mind map stuff, to actually start sending that mind map to someone who can say, well, this would be a better way to organize that. And so that's been in place. And then the next thing is okay, well, look, if I consider myself ahead of the game, then my imagination is that no one else is doing it right now in our space, and therefore if we come to market first with something like this, it would be good. It would be another way that we can kind of lead the space and kind of put a notch on our belt of saying we were the people that brought that to the market. And so that would be good, and we'd have another product, and we'd have another personality inside our company, not necessarily working in our office, but a personality that we represented to the world. Now, there's another element to it that I think is useful for people to understand. I'm paid extremely highly for my information and my time, right? When I flew over to Oslo to speak to the Googles and Microsofts of the world, I got paid $25,000 an hour. And when I was coaching last, I was getting paid $2,000 an hour. And my belief is that there's a lot of people out there who are already very familiar with instructional design and e-learning systems and stuff like that. But if they heard how much we make for our information versus how much they make for their information, they would be very interested in how we're able to do that. And so, going to the market with instructional design stuff wouldn't only help us in our market, but would help us bring in a whole new element of customer who would be like, wow, I already know the instructional design side, but how are you guys able to charge so much for the information? And then that would evolve and lead people into other types of programs that we could offer them. And so that's kind of the overall of why we would do something like that. We would do it because it would help us and our brand inside our own space. It would help us actually acquire new types of clients and customers and prospects, and we would also have better stuff inside our own stuff, inside of the things that we offer. So all around the board, it seems like a good move, and therefore it's something that we've decided to move forward with. And you should be looking at that as you relate to your own stuff, whether it's something that you actually manufacture, whether it's information that you provide or what. As you look at what you're doing to try and stay up front, could that also be something that you teach other people that would then help position you better and also not only position you better but get you a new type of client or prospect that you didn't have before? And when you find stuff like that, those are the things that you seize upon because they help and support all different elements of the business. It helps sales, it helps quality and client relationships, and it helps positioning. And so those are the kinds of elements that when you look out at the things that you're drawn to, interested in, to expand and improve what you're doing, is there a way that you can really leverage it? And when you can, that's when you seize it. So let's take the next question. But I hope that even if you provide information, that I really hope that you understood that why I think that that's the direction that you need to start thinking about at the very least. And even if you don't provide information, if you can think about the overall concept of like finding people that can provide, one, a shortcut for you in developing a better product, and two, all the other elements, the positioning elements, and also the selling elements, then you're onto something, and it's not something that should be discounted too quickly. So we'll go to the next question now.
Hey, Rich, Keith Carberry calling. How are you?
Good.
That's good. I think the person was Patricia Hutchings.
Yes, that's who it was. I forgot the last name, Hutchings.
I too tried to. I was so excited when I first got your product that I know that was probably one of the things that you wanted us to do first, but It was so difficult to focus on that because it's not a very quick procedure. So
no, it's not.
I'm looking forward to getting back to that. So, because I do agree that being able to speed read and getting the information faster obviously is just going to make things work better.
It doesn't only work better. It's just it applies to every. I mean, even in areas that you don't think. It's like in conversations. So often when I have conversations with people, I've read multiple books that relate somehow to that conversation. It always ends up being that way. And so I'm just more educated. I'm more well-rounded. And I can have a better conversation, and I can understand what they're saying better. And so therefore I get more out of the conversation. Right. And, all those elements. Plus, I seem maybe more knowledgeable than I would if I hadn't. And so therefore the possibility of having an ongoing relationship also kind of increases. Okay. And, so there are all these elements. It's like I have two things that right now, and we'll see where they go. I mean, they both could end up being nothing, but one is that, we put the audio interviews up, I think. We will be putting up the PDFs probably in the next couple of days of the interviews I did. And so one of them was with the author, the Predictably Irrational author. And, we're talking about doing something together. And that's, a pretty well-known, best-selling author, professor at MIT, who, when he does his research, does it in conjunction with Harvard Business School and London School of Economics. And I think part of the reason why I have the opportunity to do that is because when we spoke on the phone, I had read his book twice already. I knew the concepts. I was able to, have a really intelligent conversation with him. And that's a fundamental of, because I was able to read it fast. And then this other thing that we just got put in our plate is that we've been approached by Forbes for me to be, they want to start a column called Ask the Experts, and they want me to be the expert on the stuff that we do. And so, once again, I don't think that would have come about if I hadn't written all the stuff I had written, which came about because I had read all the stuff I had read. So it all comes back to that, do you have a way to input stuff consistently and continuously that's at a rate that doesn't, rob the rest of your life and this other stuff that needs to be fed and done. So I think it's really important. It's just a question of, and it's always, my only added suggestion that I haven't said before would be just to focus on your preferred style of learning first. So if it's reading, for me it's reading. I try to, as much as I can, get anything in written format because it's just easier for me to plow through reading than anything else. Yeah. After reading, it's listening to audio, but the audio has to be sped up to a certain speed or I'm going to just fall asleep. So, but if my preference was audio, then I would first kind of master that process and make sure that everything I was listening to was at a high speed. So it just kind of depends on what your preferred channel is, and once you've identified what your preferred channel is, making sure that you do whatever you can to speed that process up first.
Right, I completely agree with that. My biggest question that I have today is that last time we spoke was about 2 weeks ago, and I had formed a group quite accidentally, but it was based on your idea of strategic alliances.
Uh-huh.
And the group is now a little bit over 30, and we're probably going to head to 50 and cap it off. And basically, we keep on changing exactly how it's going to look, and I'm coming to a decision within the next 24 hours so that we have a complete design of how this group is going to work. And it's kind of the hub and spoke concept. Everyone that is a member of this group has their own software and their own product. And when a customer signs up, they get an upgrade. And when they upgrade, they can get the upgrade into our group. And our group is, because there's 50 people in this group, and this product is the viral advertising program, they're automatically viral. They're already big. that are already in the big group as a customer. And we're trying to figure out how much is this group worth when we upgrade. Is it worth $2 that goes right into our group checking account or PayPal account, or is this group worth $5 per upgrade? And it's a membership program, so it's going to be an ongoing thing. So if we all have about 1,000 customers, it's going to be 1,000 times a certain dollar amount. Are you familiar with any type of a program like this that you could shed some light on how we might want to structure what percentage of the dollar amount should go into the group?
I'm not 100% clear. So just the percentage that goes into the group, what is that money going to be used for?
Well, it's going to be used for maintenance, and then it's going to be distributed back to the group. There's going to be a little bit of a bonus pool, and then it's going to be distributed back to the group, basically even.
So it's like a co-op.
It's like a co-op, right?
Like when I went to when I was at Harvard, like the bookstore at Harvard is a co-op, and you become a member, and at the end of the year you get distributions because so many people shop there that are not, enrolled, right? Buying like shirts, jackets, T-shirts, whatever. And so, yeah, I don't remember what the check is that I got, but it was kind of insignificant, obviously. Nobody's getting rich being a member of the Harvard Co-op. But that's what it is. I don't know all the rules and stuff because, it's kind of like you join. From my perspective, I join, I get it cheaper than the normal person who walks in, and then I get a check. But in your case, it would go back to the members. But that's not why they're joining, right?
Well, they're joining the membership because the fear that this is a program that Mike Filsaime came out with. And
the butterfly reports, right. Oh,
yeah,
right.
It's the hyper plug-in viral ads.
Right.
Which I think is a great product, but he sold, I don't want to say he oversold,
right.
But there were 700 sales of the same product.
Right.
My fear was that, listen, I don't want to be competing with all 700 people. Why don't we form a group? So what I did is I found the people that had been on his post.
Yeah, no, I remember, and then you created that. Right. So
right.
And so now the question is that everybody's going to pay a certain amount, and because they're paying a certain amount,
as a customer, not only customers that come in. Everybody will be coming into individual websites. Somebody will come into my site, and if they wanted to stay free advertising, they would stay in my website. If they wanted the upgrade, there would be a fee to upgrade, and then they would be able to go into our super viral website, which will give them access to thousands of more websites.
Right. The only thing you can do is test. I don't have any reference models on that that would be useful, I think. Primarily because, it's kind of a unique kind of thing of what you're doing. So,
right.
And if you can't test, then think about what would be the lowest that would be acceptable. Is that acceptable? Is it really acceptable? And you can kind of run with that, have that be, create a higher price, have the lower price that is acceptable, the lowest acceptable be like the charter, right? Kind of like starting. And then start raising the price as it gets more adoption, because nobody's going to feel bad about having paid less. And you haven't turned anyone off, because if they first get exposed later on, they don't necessarily know that other people are paying less. And also, it wouldn't be common knowledge, so that's fine. And even if it was, charter memberships are something that lots of places have, so it's not anything that's a revolutionary type of idea that you have to worry about.
Okay, all right. The one last thing to go along with that is it is a membership program. I actually kind of lost my train of thought here. Well, you had mentioned about coming out first earlier today, that was important. And some people are thinking that we shouldn't be coming out first. And I'm one of the ones that thinks, once this product is 100% ready, I want to be ready as well and say that we're the first one to come out with it in this particular manner. And others are kind of thinking that we should hold off and maybe do a product launch type of program once it is available. Any thoughts on that?
Well, product launches only really work in the, especially going forward, but probably going backwards as well. if there's enough money in it for the affiliate. And if you're not charging a lot, then there's not going to be, unless you do like a butterfly-style site.
Well, that's what it is. It is a butterfly-style site.
Then it doesn't really need to be launched. I mean, you can kind of like do a thing for affiliates and stuff like that, but I wouldn't call it like a real product launch. And there's no reason not to do it that way, because you know, if you can do it like a viral kind of like butterfly type site, then it's going to have consistent growth, and that's always a good thing.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right. So let's see. That is all the questions I have right now. If you have a question, by all means, you can press *1. If not, I think it's going to be a short call. I can certainly talk for another 10 minutes or so and kind of tell you some stuff that I'm thinking about, talking about, etc. But my preference, obviously, would be to answer a question if someone has it, because there's a lot of people on the phone. I could call people randomly, but I won't do that to you, Howard. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about SEPA for a minute, and then we could probably talk about a few other things. Some other people are coming into the queue. Okay. One of the things that was heavily emphasized at SEPA was, and it's kind of based on the whole newsletter business as it is that conversions are obviously incredibly important, and then renewals are critical. And how do you kind of structure things so that you get a renewal? And this is something that's kind of interesting, because if you think about a lot of the questions that I've just answered versus a lot of also the models that people have, a lot of people are doing stuff on a continuity basis. And while renewals will be a little bit different, because in the newsletter business, you know, they're billing once a year. Some of them are more aggressive and bill once a quarter. Nonetheless, they're not usually doing monthly. And there's a lot of reasons why they don't do monthly, and in their economic model, it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Along the lines of where it would potentially make sense, and therefore it is something to explore, is the way we do it, you know, as in an industry that most people are billing monthly, and is there stuff that could be taken from how these big giants do things, and can we learn from it? And so I'll kind of walk you through one set of notes that I took at one of the sessions, and the session was called 10 Tactics to Maintain Improved Conversion Rates, but it was much more related to the renewal side of things and not losing people who had bought. And then we'll go back to questions. I see that there's at least one new question there. Okay, so first off, number one is it's the product. I'm going through their 10, right? It's the product. So, you know, quality first in the product as far as the right information, timeliness, service, etc. Then the next part, and this is where, you know, I think my company can improve dramatically, and that's why I'm going to places like this. You know, welcome subscriber and exceed. You know, do you do an effective job at welcoming this new member or subscriber or client, however your business is structured, in a way that will exceed expectations for quality and for service? So here's what this person did, what their company does. Within 2 days of receiving the order, they mail and ship the print hard version of the product, first issue, and if they have it in digital form, they'll email the PDF immediately so that people can have stuff as soon as possible. At the time of shipment, notification of shipment, email, if you have the email address, which you would. If you're using UPS, UPS's software will allow for an automatic email to be sent out with tracking. 1 week after order entry, second email that informs them that the customer advisor has been notified of their order and will be in contact with them. This email includes information about key benefits such as online access, login instructions, etc. With product publication first issue, welcome letter, hard copy with real person such as the editor or publisher with helpful points on how to use the product or a repetition of the benefits. Include the customer number and instructions for registering for online benefits. And then this person said, no, we handwrite the customer number on the welcome letter to ensure that it actually gets noticed. All these things can be automated, by the way. And I think it's important to listen to this because these are what the big players are doing. And maybe you can't do all these things, but can you do some of these things and improve the experience? Number 3 weeks after the purchase, customer advisor calls, confirm receipt of product, encourage its use, educate once again on the maximum value from the product, answer questions. During the call, offer additional or clarification of benefits. Is there a web archive? Help them set up their login and password. Show them the breadth of the archive and how easy it is to access. Tell them about upcoming stories or ways that they can interact with editors. And so in this case, they were obviously outsourcing that. Or let me put it this way, you would obviously probably outsource it unless you have the customer service reps in-house. When you're first starting, this isn't a bad idea for you to do it personally because you'll get a lot of feedback, and that feedback will help you modify your stuff as you kind of grow your business. Then after that, 2 months into the subscription, have the voice or expert on the publication greet them via letter to share how this person or expert feels about the product and use of it. So it's just basically reselling them on the benefits. 2 months into the subscription. 4 months into the subscription, another email from a customer representative to offer assistance via email or phone. Email is personalized and has links to the web features available to the buyer. 6 months into the subscription, another call from the customer advisor checking to see if the program is being fully used. If there are concerns, answer them. If not, and not planning to use, offer to suspend for a few months so as not to lose them at the conversion of the renewal. 7, paper renewal series starts, and this is where, when you're talking about physical newsletters, they do so very aggressively. A special series for conversions, and when I say conversions, we're talking about renewals, only with the goal of capturing their attention and enticing them to renew. 12-effort mail series, including a huge variety in delivery envelopes, messages, and offers. Now, remember, you might not be able to apply this, but could you do an HTML email, a text email, one with a different graphic? Of course you could. Earlier offers give money off. After that expires, then free issues, like additional issues like 13 months for the price of 12, reminders of online benefits, and post-expire, the focus is on getting attention through urgent mail carriers. Then number 8, after that series, when they log into the archives, a pop-up. Number 9, email renewals. 10, at expiration of phone call. 11, first renewal notice that sends them maybe one additional newsletter that tells them that it's not their subscription has already expired, but here's one more issue just to make sure that you didn't mean to renew and you meant to renew but you forgot, and we wanted to give you one more just so that it wouldn't ruin your long-term standing with us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea that I think, and the reason I wanted to talk about this, the idea that I think anyone can apply is that renewals are the lifeblood of a subscription business. And while, they're dealing with a different animal because it's 12 months till the next renewal, what they start working on the renewal in month 1, and they're doing that, with a series of processes that they have found over time will get them the most and the highest amount of renewals. And, if you have any kind of continuity program, thought has to go into that because in this day and age where there are so many options, so many continuity programs, unless you're doing stuff special, the likelihood is that you'll increasingly have lower and lower retention rates. So with that said, let's take some of these questions.
Hi, Rich. It's Mike in Toronto. How are you?
Very good. We haven't spoken in quite a while.
That's right. I've been.
No, I'm not saying it as if you should have been on. I'm just making a passing comment. What's going on?
I have been on, but I haven't asked the questions. A few weeks ago, I asked you questions regarding a CD I put together about hypnosis and public speaking. And at the time, you indicated you might have a chance to listen to it, and I'd emailed you some stuff at the address that you gave me, and I was wondering whether you've had a chance to do that or you'd like me to resend it to you.
Yeah, resend it, but send it to the address that I said earlier, K. Glossy,
okay.
Because
okay.
Yeah, and then actually I'd like to talk about email after I answer any questions that you have, because I have a new way of approaching email that I think is far superior, that has helped me reduce the amount of time that I do email tremendously. But first, it's K Glossy.
KGLO
SSY.
SSY at Cheprin.com?
At strategicprofits.com.
Okay, great. I will do that.
Okay.
My other question is,
is it a hypnosis process?
Yes, it is. It's
okay.
It's a.
I just asked because, like, at this point, like, we're moving towards Kristen automatically speeding up any audios that come in to me, but I'll tell her not to speed that one up. All right. So go ahead. What's the next question? Oh, any other questions that you have?
Yeah, it's about conversions, because you're really, talking specifically now about conversion as it comes to subscriptions.
Right.
Is there anything new that you use in terms of improving conversion?
Sure. There's a lot of stuff. I don't know if I know it all because today's my first day back in the office. 3 of the people here in the office, Ken, Alan, and Brian, they just spent the last 3 days at Marketing Sherpa's Marketing Experiments landing page conference. And so there's a lot of stuff that's new. Alan, can you hear me?
Yes.
No. I'm asking Alan.
Sorry.
I don't want to interrupt you because you're writing, right? Yeah, so you got to continue writing. But Alan, is there one big takeaway that I could share with the people listening? Something that they could do that you learned? There is. You want to share that? Because he's asking me what's new in conversion. And I said you would know better than I would. Okay, that's cool. The element that Alan just mentioned was clarity trumps persuasion. And, it's along the lines of, why is that person at your website? What are they trying to accomplish? Is it really clear that they're going to be able to accomplish exactly what it is that they want by buying your product, et cetera? What we're starting to do now is send people away more, and hopefully that will increase. And when they come back, then share with everybody else what they learned, what's going to change because of what we learned, and the big takeaways. I have to do that for the conference I was at. The people that were at that conference will do the same. But since we all just got back today,
great,
we haven't done that yet. So I'll have a lot more to say about it. But right now, I need to be educated and schooled by everybody that went because I'm behind. But, there's a lot, I think. And and I think when it comes, another thing that I will mention is that because when I spoke to Brian, he said this, and this was something that I've always felt. So I'm sure that it's just kind of along those lines. You got to be very careful who you listen to when it comes to advice on conversion. And at the end of the day, nothing is sacrosanct. It all has to be tested for you because even if they are telling you the truth, from one market to the next market could be somewhat challenging for that to hold, the same thing. And then also some people lie because it's convenient to be able to talk about some new thing that you tested. And the truth of the matter is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I would assume that after I speak to my guys here, that it's going to be really obvious that a lot of people who say that they test couldn't be testing based on what Marketing Experiments and Marketing Sherpa have discovered, because they have discovered certain things that kind of hold true consistently. So along those lines, just be very careful of who you listen to, including myself. Everything kind of has to be tested, and I think one of the places, that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Marketing Experiments, and if you've never been there, I strongly recommend marketingexperiments.com because they give you all the data. They're like, which is better, blogging or article marketing? And then they'll go out and hire freelancers for both of those and spend the same amount in each and tell you exactly what they had each person do and then what the results were and what the conversion rates were and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So once again, it might not apply to what you do, but what it does do is kind of give you a baseline to start. And, the obvious thing is, and everybody says it, I don't think very many people do it, and I think we did it, but we could do it about 100 times better, and that's one of the reasons why everybody went. You got to test relentlessly. Now, what was interesting is that and this is what another thing that Brian shared with me, that they're much bigger fans of A/B testing than they are multivariant, and they don't do any multivariant, according to Brian, with their clients. They do only A/B, and the logic that Brian gave me is that when you're doing multivariant, there's so many different variables going on. You don't really, you don't pull away any new learning, right? Like applications, something applicable to multiple pages and everything that you're doing, right? So you lose that benefit. And then the other is that, and this, Brian didn't say this, so I just want to, now this next thing is just my opinion at this point, and I could be completely wrong, but is that I just think that most of the programs out there that are offering multivariant are crock, in the sense that they are not based on the statistics that someone of high caliber would have to be involved, to know the statistics, to apply it. And I think that, anybody in our space that's offering something that's multivariant, I'm very suspect of. There are programs that I would have more confidence in, like a Vertster and probably Google Optimizer, but all the testing I've ever done has always been A/B testing, and I understand it. It's kind of like the Warren Buffett model of investing, right? Like only invest in those things that you can understand, and only use things that you understand why when it tells you a result that it's accurate, and so if that's for what it's worth, because I know I got really excited about multivariant 2 years ago, but I never really did much with it, and I know that most people are still kind of going down that line. But does something have the stats? And I know that in previous conversations, Howard had gotten some good results from whatever that was, testing Prophet, which was Prophet spelled like Persian Prophet. So I would just be reluctant on stuff like that when there's big numbers involved, and your business is somewhat sizable. So I would kind of keep an open ear to everything that's going on, but I would test, and then at some point I would probably do what we just did, which is send someone down.
Yes.
Because it's that important, and it is something that, when they all had to take a test, it's a real test at the end that it kind of displays whether they learned or not. And yeah, they passed. And some of our pages were up like everybody else's there, and some of our pages got ripped to crap, and that's that's a good thing, because that means we can improve a lot, and we just learned a bunch of stuff.
One last question, Rich,
Sure.
And I may have missed your answer to the previous one regarding a piece of software that you have that speeds up audio recordings. Is that something that's available out there, or something that we can purchase?
Yeah, there is actually. It's if you have any of the programs like the boxes that we've offered, then you have it already and you just don't know it. If you don't, then it's Faster Audio, and it's fasteraudio.com. And we're a partner in it, but we're not sure if we're going to continue to being a partner in it. But nonetheless, it was created by Mark Benda, who was a client earlier on, and he just really liked that concept that I had taught. That's one of those things that, I don't know if it really is taught in BGS, but I did go in depth in other programs about that. And so he was in, I think, the second coaching program I ever did. And he really liked that, thought it was a novel idea, and so he went out and had a programmer create something. And it's actually really cool. I mean, what it does, because you can speed up, you can speed up audio when you're listening to it, just if you're listening to it on the computer with any program, really. QuickTime will allow you to do it. Windows Media will allow you to do it. They'll all allow you to do it. The trick is that if you listen to a lot of stuff like on an iPod or something like that, can you speed it up? And the answer is really no. You can speed it up a little bit, but not very much, and it's kind of not enough. And so Faster Audio is pretty cool because you can batch process. You can take them all in. You can say you want it to be one file, or just keep the file structure as it is, and you tell it what speed, and then it automatically re-records it at the speed that you want, so that then when you put it on your iPod or wherever else, you can really, it's really easy. So, for example, one of the things I really like is, and I've mentioned it before, is David Allen's Getting Things Done Fast, like his course called Getting Things Done Fast. And so I had that, at I think 2.5 times the speed, and they created it as one file for me, so it's one 2.5-hour file or something like that, because it was originally like an 8-hour course or something, and it's just one file on my iPod, but it's at 2.5 times, and this way I can listen to it whenever I want, and I can listen to it at the speed that actually I find engaging. So yeah, that's you could do it with. You could also do it with any kind of audio software, but then you're kind of going through the steps yourself, whereas this is just like a click of a button. And then on the video side, anything that you convert to an MP4 on the Windows side, and I'm getting rusty on Windows because I don't use Windows anywhere near as much anymore. But on Windows, I think it was WinDVD will allow you to do that, and on the Mac side, QuickTime will allow you to go to like 4 times the speed.
When you start to listen to it at a faster rate, did you start at 1.5 and 2, or did you just get to 2.5 right away? I mean, it
depends on who's talking first off, but
yes.
Most people can handle 2 pretty easily. That's what I found. I mean, it might not be easy right when you start, but if 2's not easy when you start, you can always do it at 2.5 times the speed for a minute, and then back it down to 2 times, and you'll find 2 times it gets all of a sudden much easier. And then when you listen to it, I have to like give a word of warning on this, only because like the benefit is that you can rip through stuff a lot faster and learn a lot more, and also you can pay attention a lot easier. And that's why I've always done it that way. The negative side of it is it becomes, one, very hard to listen to regular audio because you're just like, oh, this is ridiculous. And I think if I look at it, it makes you somewhat impatient with people as they talk as well, because you're just so used to taking it in faster than anyone can really speak that you kind of like, okay. And then, if you're talking to someone who's redundant, and since my dad's not listening, I can say that he's kind of redundant and says the same thing 5 times. What happens is that you're just, you almost want to strangle the person. So that's the negative side, but the pluses, I think, outweigh the minuses.
All right. Thanks a lot, Rich.
My pleasure. And business is good for you overall?
Knock wood, yes. Business is good, and I think that, what you have taught has really gone beyond just internet. I found that it's really been like an MBA that I never had, and I think that's been extremely helpful to me, and I know a lot of other people in my mastermind group that feel the same way.
Cool. Yeah, and what we're doing now, and I've mentioned a lot of things that we're doing already, but another element that might be instructive and it might be helpful to you, because I remember some of the things that we've talked about in the past and might be helpful to other people, is that, I tend to, I work better with other people than I do alone. And so, if content coming from me is an issue, and that's kind of why we're doing like instructional design, because it'll make it easier to repurpose and make great products. And then the other side of it is helping find someone that I can kind of intellectually play ball with. And so along those lines, like what we're doing is we have 2 different people that through interviews we've highlighted, and both of them, if they work out, we'd bring both of them on. But one of the gentlemen is the guy who brought Pitney Bowes online, so it's a $200 million website, has an MBA and all that kind of stuff. But when I talk to him and I are on the same page, and it's like, so we can create stuff together and I can hand off, and then the other gentleman is just an online marketing whiz that's not from our world. And so these are the kind of things that we're doing as a company to try and like look at the constraint, identify it, and then build off of it. And the theory of constraints, kind of the way, I've described it many times before, but you first want to elevate the constraint. And so that's kind of where you take what you're currently doing and seeing, can you get more out of what you're currently doing? And that's kind of the idea of building instructional design. For us, it's building instructional design into it so that when I create something, it can be repurposed in many ways, right? When I'm speaking at a seminar or any place else, like I can easily start putting like the objective of the next 5 slides, 10 slides as a title slide in front, so that when it comes back, it's really easy to cut up. And therefore, once it's easy to cut up, it's easy to then take lots of different pieces that were cut up and put it into something that's all related to that issue. That's elevating the constraint, like just getting more mileage out of it, because you want to do that before you add more resources. And then the second part for us right now is like looking at ways to add resources. And what we do with this, and what we've consistently done, is try to bring people in temporarily or on a project basis, see if it works out, see if they're happy, we're happy, and if so, then we move on together, and if not, no harm, no foul. Nobody changed their life to do it, and then we move on. So I don't know if that's helpful for you or not, but that's kind of like how in our phase of growth now, we have to start thinking about how do we move past the current level, and these are some of the ways that we're doing it.
I think it's very helpful because, outsourcing has certainly made a big difference for me. And, along the lines of what you were saying, I find when I start working with a new outsourcer, I don't even get them to do the whole project. If they're designing a new page or a website for me, I get them to do one page. And then I know whether we're on the same page or not.
Yep.
And it saves a lot of time at the end of the day because I can't, before this, I can't count how many times I've gotten somebody to do a whole project only to find out that it had to be redone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cutting it up into little bits and then extending that by hiring somebody and say, okay, let's try this for a month, and if it works, we'll move beyond that. The only other thing is that, I really look forward to what you guys got out of the. I listen to marketing experiments all the time. I think they're amazing, and on the conversions, because what I find is, at least in my case, is that conversions have started to go up incrementally.
Right.
Traffic has really gone up. So, that gap right now for me is, okay, now that traffic has gone up, how do I increase my conversions? Because 1% increase in the conversion is going to be huge.
Well, that plus, once you have the conversion, how do you increase the value of that new client, new customer?
In a way, I think that's almost. We have the upsell products being ready, like this Hypnosis CD,
right,
and a bunch of like a piece I'm putting together. I've done a whole bunch of podcasts with leading public speakers and coaches,
right.
And so that's going to be a product. But I think that it comes back to where you started with us, and
right,
that was how do you build momentum, right?
Right.
And once you build that momentum, how do you leverage it to go up to the next level?
Yeah, but the only reason I add that part is that the more, at the end of the day, it's conversion is obviously a vital element, and it would be wrong of me to discount it in any way, shape, or form, and so I would never do that. But equally important is are you doing everything to get the highest lifetime value? Because at the end of the day, the person with the highest lifetime value can afford to give affiliates the most, can afford to advertise the most aggressive, and that lifetime value of a visitor is very highly influenced by your conversion rate. Lifetime value of a customer is something different.
I think that's probably intellectually one of the toughest things to grasp, at least for me. I can't speak for other people. Because I remember we're talking, in initial when we used to do the stuff live, like the modules, talking about how some people will make no money on the initial transaction, right?
Right.
And that's a very foreign concept. It was to me anyhow.
Right.
But when you start looking at it in the context of building a business as opposed to creating an opportunity, it starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and right now, for our company, we're exploring a lot of stuff that that is outside our space, allows us to play in our space, but also start moving to other areas. And a lot of times we start that process, spearhead that process, by thinking about a product that we could create that would be right for that, that wouldn't necessarily need to show any profit whatsoever. So, I'll give you an example there, and hopefully nobody runs to try and do the same, and at least gives us time to get our stuff on, is SkyMall. We're starting to talk with them about developing some stuff and allowing them to keep all the profit. We don't care, so that we can start having products listed in there. It wouldn't be like the coaching program because that's not going to really work, but front-end products that they could, if it performs for them and they can keep it, they're happy, and we get a new client. And we're listed in a magazine that's pretty much on every single airline. So that's not a bad market. And so, these are the things that we're looking at. And when you have that right philosophy as far as not making money on it, it's kind of, and, I think tomorrow's thing with Mike Filsaime will be somewhat illustrative of that. And I won't go into all the details of it now, but if someone asks me next week, the behind-the-scenes kind of what's going on there, why did I do that, I will gladly share all the information. And it's very strategic. And there's one person who commented on that blog who referenced kind of what we were doing. So in the comments, there's somebody who got it. but only one. And it's along those lines. It's the same thing. It's about building customers that, in that particular case, it's actually at a loss, but nonetheless, not a long-term loss.
Well, yeah, I mean, I take, that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, we have a few customers that pretty much have ordered everything that we have available. We just don't have anything else right now, right?
And then along those lines, and this I'll just kind of to wrap this conversation up is there's a book that came out I think about 2 years ago, might have been a little less than that. It's called The Ultimate Question. And I buy into this concept. I haven't read the whole book. It almost seems kind of silly to read the book because it's all based on one question. And, you find out that question pretty early on.
What's the answer? Yes.
And the question is basically it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely it is that you will refer us to other people. And you could certainly get, like, if you type in quotes, The Ultimate Question, referability or something like that, you'll probably find a much better explanation than I could give because I didn't read the book. But that, at the end of the day, will tell you, one, if you're going to hold on to your clients for a really long time, and two, if your clients will help you get other clients. And the better that you're able to kind of move that number into a 9 or 10, because that's what it has to be according to them, companies that have a 9 or 10 have a very high likelihood of continual growth because their customers are happy enough that they will then go out and tell other people. And so therefore, it's a good concept to kind of look at because the sooner you can start looking at that kind of information, the better off you'll be. We're doing more of looking at that now. We haven't done it yet, so I'm kind of like just sharing stuff that we're talking about and what we're doing. And then along those lines, I guess I said that was going to be the last one, but I'll say one more. One of the things that I've always wanted in my company, I had it in other companies, haven't had it here. We thought we had people in the past, but it just didn't work out, is a client advocate. Somebody whose job it is to kind of always take the customer's perspective. And this way there's somebody in the office that when we get all excited about doing something, there's somebody whose job it is to just always keep the current clients and what we're doing in mind so that their job is to fight for our clients' rights. And it's not that we discount clients. It's just that, it's really easy to get excited about something new. And therefore there's got to be somebody whose job it is to always be fighting for the clients. And that's obviously important as you look more at lifetime value and retention and all those kinds of things.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rich. I appreciate your time.
Cool. All right. So before I take the next question, let me just talk to you about email for a second, because I've been reading a lot about email recently, and I thought I had some good ideas about it, but I found that there were some really good ideas that were better than my ideas out there, and so I'd like to share them for a second. I used to, when I look at my Outlook folder, or for example, I have lots of categories. Lots of categories, lots of folders, lots of subfolders, and even some sub-subfolders. And that makes sense, I guess, from a standpoint of being able to access stuff. It really doesn't make sense from a standpoint of being able to process a lot of stuff fast. And there are better ways, actually, to have stuff organized that can get you things fast that also are very quick to be able to blitz through. So I want to talk about this for a minute, because if there's not anybody, unless you're already doing this, that couldn't benefit tremendously. To give you an idea, when I was on the plane ride going to Washington, D.C., I had already read this, and so my desire was to actually set it up on my laptop this way so that when I landed, I could then sync back and it would be the way I wanted it to. So I used to have all these files. I got rid of all these files. I put all these emails into this one big folder called Archive. And then I created saved searches, right? And you can do this really easily. If you've ever searched in your Outlook box or your Gmail folder or whatever, you can save the search. And so anything that you would have as a folder, you could just set up the criteria so it's actually a saved search. Now, you might say, well, then what's the difference? Well, the difference is huge in your ability to process. So whereas before I might have had 40, before maybe I had over 100 email folders, which meant every time I read an email, I then had to drag it to the right folder, which could take anywhere from 10 seconds to maybe 40 seconds. I haven't got it. I'd be lying if I said I only had now one archive folder. I've got about 3, but that's only because I haven't set up the searches yet. Once I get up the searches set up, my goal is to have one archive folder. It didn't take any time to then, after I was done deciding on the email, to then just rip it over to the archive folder. So on every email I saved about 30 seconds, let's say on average, or 20 seconds. It ended up being such a huge noticeable difference in the way I approached my email and how much I was able to get done. So for people that are interested in it, like the way I kind of have it set up right now is my first folder right there is for Kristen, right, who I've mentioned like 3 times in this call, so hopefully I don't have to mention who she is again. The next one is for me. And for me, there's the top folder, for Rich, right? And it has an @ symbol in front of it so that it stays right at the top under for Kristen, @for Kristen. And that is where all email goes that I actually have to take action on, right? Then there is from me, because I send myself emails all the time if I'm at different places or if I'm using Jot. Then there's archive, there's follow-up, and waiting to delete. And so follow-up is that I've sent an email, but I'm going to have to send another email at some point, so it's in follow-up. Waiting to delete is that I think it's a done issue, but I'm waiting for something, and until I hear that something, it might not be an email, maybe a meeting with someone, did you get that email, what are you doing about it? I don't want to fully delete it because once I fully delete it, I will forget about it. And I'm trying to think what else. And so in the inbox, things come into the inbox. My goal at looking at the inbox is to sort that as fast as humanly possible so that I can get my inbox to 0. Then in that for Rich, that's all the ones I have to take action on. So when I look at it, it's not going to have that many. It's going to have 10, 12, 5. Last night I got it down to 0. So there's nothing I needed to take action on. But just having those separate, the ones that actually needed my actions, made it very easy to kind of blitz through what was needed. Everything else goes into archive, and the concept of having a saved search as opposed to a folder allows you to get at the information faster. Sometimes you're not even sure where to put information because it could go into 2 different folders. You don't have to worry about that anymore because you have your saved searches, and they'll find it in either one. And you're able to blitz through email a lot faster. And that's more and more the way you should be organizing all data. Less file structure, more advanced search, because to be able to not have to spend a lot of time, 1, putting it in its right place, and 2, being able to pull it back up, makes things tremendously more efficient and easier to be able to do. So kind of with that said, we'll take the next question, but I hope that that's something that everybody listening really starts to think about, because all I can tell you is that it was dramatic, the difference it made, like insanely dramatic. I can't even tell you how dramatic it's been. And so whereas I used to maybe have a folder for my team and then a subfolder with everybody's name on it, I could easily have a folder called Team that has a search, a saved search for each of those names, and when I hit that one, it will still pull up all the emails that either have that person either in the from line, to line, or if I want to also have it in the body, it's up to me how I save the search. But I don't have to go through all those folders every time I'm reading an email, and that's the much bigger issue. So I hope that people act on that, because I've been able with that to start getting very timely with the emails to team members and partners, other than stuff I got to read, like, a 100-page book or something to get back to someone, in a half an hour. And if I did my email the old way, it would probably take about 4 hours. So it's a huge time saver for me, and I hope that people act on it. All right, let's take that question.
Please ask your question now.
It's the same one, so let's do that.
Hi, Rich.
Yep.
Hi, it's Dan Pfister from Toronto. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Rich, thanks for that email tip just now. That was that was amazing.
Yeah, it's not. I read it somewhere, but it's like it's so powerful. It really is, and I've kind of approached things that way when it comes to my computer, but I haven't done it with email. And as soon as I did it, it was just like, wow, I should have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, what I love about it is it's so obvious that it's going to work that I'll probably actually take the action. Anyway, Rich, we've
You're the book summary people.
You got it exactly. Now you know I've been calling in too many times.
No, you haven't. And actually, you might even want to think about going to SIPA at some point, because I can tell you I wasn't in the session. Chris was, because that's
right.
who came with me to SIPA. But Soundview presented, and they talked about what they're – it's going to be a month, and it's probably going to be a couple weeks after that I actually go through it. But, I ordered all of the sessions I missed,
right?
All the audios, PowerPoints, et cetera. And I plan on going through that one. What I remember from my conversation with Chris was that they have had a decrease overall in offline sales. They've had an increase online, but they're finding conversion more difficult. That they've gotten some new competitors in the mix recently, and she, I guess, was complaining about one competitor who kind of like gives you 50 new summaries a month or something like that. And that, let me think, what else was they have, trying to think, what was the other takeaways there? They weren't doing a lot of other things that they could have been doing. That was something that Chris was mentioning to me, that, the fact that they didn't really sell they sold like a summary package for $4 or $5 or whatever it was, but they didn't like just sell, for example, an audio subscription that you could do through iTunes, or a series of them that you could just get through iTunes. And he thought that was a huge mistake on their part. And Chris is the gentleman that came from Boca Java, which is a very successful front end coffee company that gets people to buy coffees in a coffee maker, and then gets on a continuity program. And he's the same gentleman that was offered a job from Microsoft to handle their affiliate programs, and we ended up stealing him. So those were some of his things. But I'll listen to it, and I'll listen to it specifically with you in mind, so that if there are other elements. But what I will tell you is this also, and that is that I left that conference with the thought that we should probably be working with someone in the book summary space to do some kind of repurposing, private label, licensing type of agreement. And so if you have that capacity, then you could talk to Kristen, send her an email, and then I'll talk to you about it. But it's definitely one of the things that was on my list. As I left, I was like, we could talk to Soundview, and so we have their information. But I'd obviously love to talk to you first if that's a possibility. So with that all said, I don't want to really talk about that here, but how can I answer whatever question you have?
Okay, so should I email Kristen?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you also asked me before about learning how we approach associations and get into them.
Yep, yeah, and we could talk about that with, just email Kristen, and then we can set something up offline so that, we're not wasting everyone's time on
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's where I am. I'm creating a product. We surveyed all of our people. We said, what do you want most? And they said they want leadership, and they want 4 different categories. I mentioned this to you last time. Mm-hmm. So what we did is we surveyed them to ask them what kind of price they would pay.
Right.
We know you can't get accurate data from that, but you can get some pretty interesting objections for different price points.
Yes, and along those lines, let me just stop you for a second. Let me just see if I have it. Do I have it? A gentleman that I really respect recommended, let me just see if I have it, here it is, recommended a book for me. They just recommended it while I saw them at SIPA, so obviously I haven't read it yet. But it's called The Psychology of Pricing, and it's by Marlene Jensen. And he was saying that I should read it because if I read it, I would know how to price things to maximize profits better.
Oh,
and he's familiar with my business. So I would imagine that wouldn't just be for me. It would be helpful for anyone. But like I said, I don't have it yet. I haven't even looked at it. I haven't downloaded it. I haven't ordered it. So, but the gentleman doesn't recommend a lot of books to me, so I would assume that it's going to be a good one.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we did is we were told how to ask the questions for pricing, and I can share those with you if you'd like for your audience.
Sure.
Okay, one thing, the first question you ask is, this is the way we did it. We did a 2-paragraph description of our product.
Okay.
And then we
I hope other people are writing this down because I'm writing it down, and I think it's useful.
It was an expensive. Anyway, the person that I got it from is very knowledgeable about this.
Okay.
It's Glenn Livingston, actually.
Okay.
Tremendous guy. So he said. So we gave a description, so people had an idea what we were talking about, and then we said, how much would you expect to pay for a product like this?
Okay, that's question number 1.
That was question number 1, and we put expect in caps so that it's very clear that this is the question. And then the next question is, what would you be willing to pay? Okay.
Is it how much would you expect to pay for a product like this, or for this product, or
for a product like this?
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next question is, how much would you be willing to pay? And willing is in capital letters, right? So they see the 2 questions. Oh, expectations, willingness. Okay? Because people don't read questions and surveys really closely.
So it's willing, but you're right.
Right. So we have one question for willing, one question for expecting.
Okay.
And so the expecting question gives you an idea of what these people think a product like this is going to be worth. Okay.
Right.
And the willing is, I don't want you to rip me off. I want to pay the cheapest possible price.
Right.
Okay? So you get an idea of what the cheapest possible price is.
Right.
But what's really interesting about this is that if you add a third question, just asking for any comments.
Right.
And the comments.
And how did you say that? What was
we said, so do you have any comments about the questions or the product above?
Okay.
Very simple, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what we found. Would you like me to share my data or
I'd love it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Because, if I would have learned this before, it would have really helped me, so I think it might be instructive. So what we found was that there was a price point of about $150. Anybody who said that this product is worth less than $150?
That's the expect side?
That's the expect.
Right.
The expect is less than 150. That meant these are the people who had all the objections. These are the people who said products like this are useless. These products only give fluff. All this.
In the comments.
This in the comments came up over and over again. Okay.
Right.
So what we found was that people that gave it a low value, we
weren't going to buy it no matter what.
Exactly. But also they're telling us what objections we need to overcome to sell them.
Right.
So anyway, to me that was just like hearing words and experiencing. It's just massive.
Yeah.
So the next thing we found was that anybody who wanted to pay $300 or more was basically sold. This is something I want.
That's expect to pay. Once again, number 1.
Expect to pay over $300. Okay?
Right.
And we had from $300 to $5,000. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So when I talked to Glenn about pricing this, he's kind of like you. He says, let's go for the win, okay? Like for a first kind of a product.
So he kind of had that same kind of approach. That's interesting because he knows more about pricing than I do, obviously. So, okay.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, that's what he said. Go for the low end, but here's my dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing here is we've got a bunch of customers, and we're going to launch this product to our customers, but that's not where the real money is. The real money is in our relationships with other people. We've got like 300,000 people we've got access to. So what we want to do is we want to nail this sales process, and to nail it, we've got to know what the optimal price is. So we basically have to do price testing.
Right.
So the way we thought of doing our price testing is, Glenn thought
AdWords ads?
I'm sorry?
AdWords ads?
Well, that's our part 2.
Okay.
Part 1, and he's not saying this is what we should do. Okay. He wanted us to go in a very different direction.
Okay.
But we're doing a launch, and that's all there is to it. Like, we're committed to this launch. So what we're going to do is we're going to split up our list into 3.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to test $297, $397, and $497.
Uh-huh.
Some people are going to find out that there was a different price. Other people paid.
And you'll just make good on it, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll know what the optimal price is in that range. Now, if we find that $497 pulls best, we're going to do a big pay-per-click campaign over the summer and see how high is high.
Yep, that makes sense. I mean, I'll tell you that, like, for us, like, we're going to, like, one of these new products that we're launching, we kind of, like, we're batting around different ideas, and we like 2 different ideas. And so for us, like, the no-brainer was, well, those should both be headlines in an AdWords ad with the same text below it, and let's just kind of test it. And I don't know, this would be more of a question for Glenn than for me, but because Glenn is, he works really closely with Perry as well. Could you test price in an AdWords? I know you can test names because we've done it before.
Right.
But could you test price in an AdWords ad? Because it's just it's a great way to get a lot of exposure and get some data really quick without having to do anything.
Yeah, and that's very true. The real challenge is that when you do an endorsed mailing and you do pay-per-click, there's a very different relationship. So
very, very different, and sometimes it's very hard to kind of equate the two.
Exactly. So if we do the hard testing, see if people just want to pay $290, so we can get an idea of a ballpark. Because if we find that if we do pay-per-click and we find $397 and we do ours, well, we could have tested $397 against $297 and $497.
Yep.
So this way,
it makes a lot of sense. But now, what about the number 2 answer? Did you use the number 2 answer in any way, shape, or form, or not really?
Not really. What the number 2 answer basically?
It's really a decoy to get them to be honest with number 1.
Yeah, it is. It is, and also people are very suspicious, is what Glenn said. They're always going to give you much lower numbers than they really think. They're more skeptical. They think that if I say a high number, they're going to.
Then they're going to have to pay a high number and blah blah blah.
Yeah. So by asking these 2 questions and putting in comments, you not only get numbers, but you get a context for the numbers. And the context is the objections, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that just blew my mind. I mean,
I think that's a great takeaway, and thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. So you think that splitting my list up into 3 and doing a launch like that is fine?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, that I think is absolutely fine. I mean, remember, I don't know the dynamics of, like, how you work with associations and whether that would play out negatively or not. You might want to keep all members. I mean, it's not going to be as accurate, so I don't know. It's like, on the one hand, you want to keep all the members of an association together so that you don't mess up your relationship with the association. On the other hand, if you do that, your test is going to be a lot less accurate. So you got a judgment call to kind of make there. Do you know what I mean? But because I would imagine, hypothetically, that, like, no association wants to get a call complaining that, like, other people in the association paid a different price.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that could strain your relationship with the association. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that, so you're just going to have to think about that. And if you're going to go down one road or the other, maybe you can take some precautionary stuff, like, I don't know, kind of sharing that information maybe with the association, but that might not be a good idea because they might want to nix it. So, just something to think about.
Okay.
I don't know what the right answer is because I don't know all the dynamics that are involved.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't shooting myself in the
No, I mean, I think it's always, and it's always, you can always make it right. And, the data is more important. And, even like, for example, like in my first coaching program that I launched, like, to RSpace, right? And you're not launching in RSpace, but same kind of difference. I came out with the coaching program, which was with me personally, and then a week later I offered it without me personally. And there were a couple people that were in one that wanted to go to the other, and that was fine.
Right.
Because in the grand scheme of things, that number was so insignificant compared to the bigger number of what we were able to sell because of it. And, Yeah, so it was completely fine. I mean, we didn't care either way, and that's kind of the approach you have to take, that you don't really care at the end of the day if someone pays, $197, $397, $597. It doesn't matter. I mean, you're trying to get information, and so that information is going to be worth potentially several hundreds of thousands of dollars once you know how to price it right. So someone going from $397 to $197 or $597 to $197 doesn't mean a lot of money at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rich. Greatly appreciated.
My pleasure. Okay. Cool. All right. So it's exactly 5 o'clock on mine clock. So that kind of wraps up this call. I'm going to share one more tip just because, and then we'll call it a day and move on with our stuff. And hopefully those of you who are going to email me, I'm looking forward to it. And Jim, I am going to look at your stuff, so I don't see you still on the phone, though. But if you listen to there you are. So maybe you still are. Okay, so anyway, one of the things that will help you in your SEO, and remember that I used to be really at the cutting edge of this stuff. I'm not anymore, but it's a tactic that used to work incredibly effectively, and I would assume, unless somebody wants to tell me that it doesn't, that it will still work really well. And that is to get links from educational sites, sites that end with .edu. And there's a pretty easy way to find some initial sites that will have it. So that's kind of what you're always better. There's an initial way to find some sites that you could get links from really quickly that are educational sites. And those educational sites, their links will be worth more because in general it's harder to get those kind of links, and therefore they are given a premium. So how would you find sites that you can get educational links from? And there's a pretty easy way. It's going to require some Google syntax. So I'm going to explain to you what you would type in your Google box to find sites that are relevant. And I'll go through the context of the syntax of it twice so that you can write it down. So it's site : if I don't say space, there is no space, okay? Site : so period, edu, okay? Then so that's the first thing, right? Site : .edu space, okay? In URL, INURL, blog, space, okay? Your keyword, whatever keyword it is. So if I was, I might do business, okay, just to use an example. So it would be site : .edu space in URL : blog, then business, right? So there's a space after blog, and then your keyword, then a space after your keyword. Then in quotes, post a comment, close quotes, and post space a space comment, close quote. All right. Then two more syntax things to add so that you don't find ones that you can't post to because they're edu sites. Sometimes the comments are closed or you have to log in. So what you next type in is space after the post a comment in quotes, open quote, comments, space, closed, close quote. So I don't know if I said it, minus sign first, quote, comments, space, closed, close quote. And to understand the syntax, what we're telling Google is don't show us any of these pages that have the words comments closed on it, because if comments are closed, you won't be able to comment. Then the last thing that you'd want to have is another negative qualifier. So it would be space, minus, open quote, you must be logged in. All with spaces in between those words, close quote. And so when you do that, what you end up looking for, and then I'll just kind of go through the whole syntax again, what you end up doing is you're looking for blogs that are edu endings that will allow you to comment in your space, And if you do it intelligently, where you're not just running and kind of spamming them, and you do it for one's blog posts that actually relate to maybe a keyword or a blog post that you have, all of a sudden it becomes a cool way to kind of get some EDU sites linking to your blog. Not a bad way of doing it. So once again, I'll just kind of read through it quickly, and then we'll call it a day. I see one more question there, so well, you know, I do have to run because I promised someone I would call them at the end of this call. So it's site:/.edu space in URL :blog space your keyword space open quote post space a space comment close quote space minus open quote comment space closed close quote space minus open quote you space must space be space logged space in close quote. And there you go. So to get some EDU blogs, and you could do it yourself or you could have someone in your office do it, just an easy way to get some links back to your site from EDUs, which always increases the value of the link to your site. So with that said, have a wonderful day. I'm sorry I didn't get to the last two questions that I see here. I'll promise that if you call in next week, you'll be at the top. I know who they are. And I look forward to talking to everyone next week. I will have some stuff, hopefully, that I've learned from the guys here from Marketing Experiments, plus a bunch of other stuff that we have been learning all over the place because we've been really trying to absorb a lot of knowledge. And once again, I just want to thank everybody for their contributions because those were some really great contributions that we got, one on the e-learning side of those 4 questions, and then on the pricing side, how to find out the right price. So with that said, I hope you got value out of those too, because I certainly did. And I look forward to talking to everyone next week. And if you can, I would strongly recommend that you try that email technique. You will thank me on the next call if you do it. I promise you that. So with that said, adios.